In 1949, the Chinese government loses control of the mainland to the Chinese revolutionaries. And as such, it is forced to flee on the island of Taiwan, where they declare martial law. Now, to oversimplify things, there have been many attempts of Chairman Mao to invade Taiwan during its history. All of these attempts have failed, and the conflict between these two places has stopped the moment the United States decided to intervene on behalf of Taiwan. This intervention was made by President Eisenhower in an attempt to stop the spread of communism around the world. They have provided Taiwan with personnel as well as the equipment in order to defend themselves, and finally decided to threaten Chairman Mao that the Americans are going to nuke China if they are going to try to invade Taiwan. Now, up until this day, the situation is left in a very weird state, where the Chinese Communist Party claims that Taiwan is actually part of China and not a separate nation, while the United States and many of its allies consider Taiwan to be an independent place. So why is this important today? Well, Taiwan, number one, managed to experience a huge economic growth, which historians have called the Taiwan miracle. In order to understand just how important this one nation is to the economy of the entire world, imagine that if Taiwan was to disappear tomorrow, it would cause a massive global crisis, as manufacturers of phones, computers, and cars would be unable to produce goods. And this is due to the fact that over 70% of chips are being manufactured in Taiwan, among other essential goods that the entire world relies on. And if this is not enough, Taiwan's strategic position allows it to intersect various trade routes, which would cause the people owning Taiwan to be able to set various fees and tariffs if they so wished. And finally, it's also a very important strategic objective. The situation of this island allows for the owner of the island to control a vast area within the Chinese Sea. So now you can understand just how important this little island is. And it's even more so important diplomatically, especially for nations like the United States, because Taiwan represents the symbol of the United States' domination in the South China Sea. The United States has also assumed the obligation, through the diplomatic treaties that it signed, to defend Taiwan from any incursion. Should the US fail to protect Taiwan from Chinese aggression, it would signal to all of the other nations in the Pacific that the US is incapable of protecting its allies. The United States' influence in the world due to their military will evaporate, and so would the value of the US dollar overnight. This would cause Western economies to crash and force nations to go to the bargaining table with China, abandoning ties with the US. And China would be in a position to dictate the course of the world economy as they control manufacturing, and could deny countries who will not bend the knee and force subservient countries and businesses to chastise those that do not fall in line. And we can already see China exercising this soft power in order to push for American athletes to apologize the moment that they even insinuate that Taiwan could be an independent nation.
And former pro wrestler John Cena has touched off an international controversy.
Cena apologized to the people of China after calling Taiwan a country during a promotional interview with a Taiwanese broadcaster.
Taiwan is a country. I mean, it's an independent country. John Cena is not alone in Hollywood in towing that line.
我必须说，现在就是很重要。我爱更尊重中国，更中国人。
Another example of how China can use its economic might in order to control the conversation which is happening outside its borders can be seen at the early 2020, when a very bizarre scene was caused as a reporter asked a representative of the World Health Organization about Taiwan.
Senior WHO official has raised hackles in Taiwan by appearing to dodge questions about Taiwan's exclusion from the World Health Body. During an interview via video chat with a Hong Kong media outlet, Bruce Aylward, a Canadian epidemiologist, remained silent for about 10 seconds when asked if the WHO should reconsider Taiwan's membership. After their video hookup appeared to be disconnected, the interviewer called him back. This time, Aylward declared that if he had contracted the coronavirus, he would want to be treated in China.
WHO considered Taiwan's membership. Hello?
I'm sorry, I can't hear. I couldn't hear your question.
Okay, yeah. Let me repeat the question.
No, that's okay. Let's move to another one then.
When Aylward was asked about Taiwan, he stalled for close to 10 seconds and avoided a reporter's question. But the reporter persisted.
I'm actually curious on talking about Taiwan as well, on Taiwan's case.
We decided to give Dr. Aylward another call to follow up.
And I just want to see if you can comment a bit on how Taiwan has done so far in terms of containing the virus.
Well, we've already talked about China.
Aylward is an Assistant Director General at the WHO and is a Canadian-trained epidemiologist. Ever since the pandemic broke out, he has constantly sung China's praises.
Okay, so China is spending a lot of resources and is showing the world that it has the capability of controlling the speech of people both within and outside its borders. It is trying to persuade everyone that Taiwan is actually part of China. So what's the big deal? Well, this by itself wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but if you look at other key pieces, you start to worry. First of all, China is recently leading a cultural push in order to masculinize its men. China has believed that the influence of K-pop and other pop culture is making men more feminine and thus not strong enough. That's a very interesting thing, and there is a lot of money involved in order to masculinize the Chinese men. On another front, you will notice that China is busy producing boats. How many boats? Well, I guess enough to make it the world's largest navy at this point. And if you also take into account the fact that it's starting to violate the airspace of Taiwan more and more frequently, you notice that the Western powers are going to react to this. First of all, India decided to send 4 warships in the South China Sea. Germany is also sending 1 warship, which is something it hasn't done in 2 decades. And finally, the United Kingdom is sending an aircraft carrier, and this is on top of all of the ships that are already in the area belonging to the United States. So, how does China like this? Well, it doesn't like it very much. In fact, in one of the pro-Chinese publications, they have issued a statement that if the United Kingdom wants to play the role of bullying China in the region, it is demeaning itself. And if there is any real action against China, then the United Kingdom is looking for a defeat. And also, it says that all the other countries, which would include India, Germany, Japan, the United States, outside the region are advised to stay away from this confrontation to avoid, and this is in quotations, accidental injury. Why is this in quotations? I have no idea. You can figure it out yourself. But on top of all of this, only recently China was disrespecting the US diplomats, saying that the United States cannot talk to China from a position of strength anymore, something that the US did not dare to challenge. Now, let's look at another key player in the region, which is Japan. Now, many political analysts pointed out that if you look at the cover of the Defense of Japan, which is a yearly paper published by the Ministry of Defense, you will see a very interesting change in tone. Back in 2017, in the front and center, you'd have people smiling and a father hugging his son. 2018, a very boring cover with a couple of squares and nothing much going on. 2019, it's just a picture of the Earth. And by 2020, you see a samurai that is completely dressed in war armor, ready to charge at the enemy. And if this doesn't make you understand the gravitas of the situation, the Deputy Prime Minister of Japan has said, if China invades Taiwan, Tokyo may interpret the move as a threat to Japan's survival and deploy the self-defense force to exercise collective self-defense. In other words, since World War II, Japan is not allowed to attack another nation. The only exception to this is if Japan's survival is at stake. And this is exactly how the Japanese Deputy Prime Minister has framed this, as a direct threat to Japan's survival. To this, China issued a very interesting response. They said, we will use nuclear bombs first. We will use nuclear bombs continuously. We will do this until Japan declares unconditional surrender for the second time. This was a threatening video circulating among official Chinese Communist Party. They further said that when we liberate Taiwan, if Japan dares to intervene by force, even if it only deploys one soldier, one plane or one ship, we will not only return fire but also wage full-scale war against Japan itself. So as you can see, tensions are a little bit high. And the events which took place 2 days ago made the tensions even higher. You see, 2 days ago, the United States withdrew from Afghanistan. Now, this in itself didn't really cause them to lose face internationally, because Afghanistan is called the graveyard of empires after all. But the problem was the army which the United States trained, an army which costed $1 trillion, an army which offered absolutely no resistance in the face of the enemy, and also the fact that the United States did do absolutely no effort in order to provide any sort of support for the army when it was encircled. And this causes China to see America as weak. This causes China to see America as a paper tiger. China views America right now as a nation that is at war with itself. It views it as a house divided. It views the United States as incapable of defending its allies. It views the United States as incapable of training an army. They're most likely aware that in American culture, criticizing a foreign state like China can be viewed as xenophobia, even if the criticism would be levied at the government and the criticism would be accurate. And more importantly, they probably know they're not going to get an administration that is as positive towards them as the Biden administration is. If a Republican or some other more warmongering individual would ascend to the American presidency, China might never have an opportunity like it has right now. And probably this is why we see the rhetoric becoming even more exponentially aggressive from the Chinese state-controlled media. After the fall of the Kabul regime, the Taiwan authorities must be trembling. Don't look forward to the United States to protect them. Taipei officials need to quietly mail order a 5-star red flag from the Chinese mainland. It will be useful one day when they surrender to the People Liberation Army. The Global Times says, if war breaks out across Taiwan, will the United States keep its promise? Some media ask the U.S. hasten pullout from Afghanistan. The United States has never promised to send troops if conflicts occur across the straits, an expert in Taiwan said. And you see the very shameful, very bad optic picture with the helicopter over the U.S. Embassy. Now, it's irrelevant whether or not the United States is strong or not. It's completely irrelevant whether the U.S. would be able to defend Taiwan. What seems to be the case is China not only talking openly about planning to do the liberation of Taiwan, but also openly disrespecting the United States and not fearing it, which is a little bit problematic for anyone that knows history, because you would know that wars happen when one power thinks it has the upper hand over another power. And this seems to be the case right now. It's a complete powder keg in the Chinese Sea, with China doing more and more training exercises on the invasion of Taiwan, violating this nation's airspace more constantly, as well as recently doing even more training exercises next to the waters. So we see a really nasty standoff, which could potentially start World War III. Now, on the American side, and this is my hypothesis, which is why I left this towards the end of the video, I noticed something very interesting that a lot of people didn't seem to catch on. You see, one of the reasons on why it may be that the US didn't try to provide air support for the Afghanistan National Army is that it may run low on Hellfire missiles. You see, the Pentagon 3 years ago has decided to stop buying Hellfire missiles. And the Hellfire missiles are short-range missiles used in the Middle East, which may be why it's running low, and a sustained campaign against the Taliban would have probably be unlikely. So what is the Pentagon buying instead, if not for Hellfire missiles? Well, apparently it's buying state-of-the-art, long-range weapons that are better suited for the operations in Pacific, aka against China. In other words, we are witnessing a game of chicken between all of the world's superpower over what appears to be one of the most important strategically piece of land on the entire Earth. And all it takes is one missile, all it takes is one plane, and this could kick off World War III. Now, my opinion that if heaven forbid this were to happen, it would probably happen with a blitzkrieg. China would probably launch missiles against Taiwan, against Okinawa, and against other strategic objectives in the region, trying to destroy all of the ships in its waters, and then it will wait to see what's going to happen. It will probably say that being one of the world's biggest manufacturers, it would boycott any nation that would try to come to the defense of Taiwan or the United States. And I think like that would be it. That's how it could start. It's a very plausible scenario. I hope it's a very unlikely scenario. But I do think that China was waiting for quite a while to see the US drop the ball on an international event. And honestly, this is it. I don't think the US is going to make a bigger blunder than it has proven to do in Afghanistan. So, yeah, the parties probably are going to be on the side of the United States. You're going to see India, you're going to see Japan, you're going to see Australia, you're going to see South Korea. And on the side of China, I don't know about Russia. Probably it's going to try to stay neutral at first, maybe sell weapons to the Chinese under the table. And if it's going to see that China is winning, then it's going to join China. If not, it's probably going to join the United States. Potentially, it might try to gobble up a little bit of Ukraine while the conflict is happening and people are distracted. Who knows? But that's definitely a very dark scenario. Something that I hope isn't going to happen. But many political analysts are very worried at the situation right now. I guess we don't have the doom clock to move it closer to midnight, huh? Well, anyway, that's my low IQ take on this particular situation. Let me know what you think. I'm also very interested in hearing from people in the region. Diplomatically, things look bad. But, you know, things looked bad before and nothing happened. So hopefully this is going to be the case this time. I'll see you guys in the comment section and I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.